If you think you felt a great disturbance in the Force, you're not wrong. Ed Gross and me, Mark A. Altman, have a new oral history coming out this July from St. Martin's Press. It's Secrets of the Force, the complete, uncensored, unauthorized oral history of the Star Wars saga. So wherever you buy books, audio, and video, pick it up today, pre-order, and you can learn the secrets of the Force. And don't miss our oral history of Star Trek in stores now. And of course, nobody does it better. The complete oral history of James Bond in digital, hardcover, paperback, and audio. That is all. If you're a fan of Inglorious Treksperts, you're going to love Treksperts Briefing Room, a new series.
Briefing Room? What is that?
I was about to explain, then you interrupted me.
Sorry.
It's curated audio commentaries of classic Star Trek episodes from the original series all the way through Enterprise. You're going to love it as we explore the behind-the-scenes making of all these wonderful Star Trek episodes with cast and crew that you would never expect to hear doing audio commentaries on Star Trek.
Sounds like fun.
It will be. And you can find it on the Inglorious Treksperts podcast feed and on the new Treksperts Briefing podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Let's go see
what's out there.
If you're a fan of the 430 movie, you'll love Best Movies Never Made, hosted by myself, Josh Miller.
And Steven Scarlatta.
Where we explore some of the greatest movies never made, like E.T. 2,
Johnny Quest,
Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian,
and Halloween 3D.
New episodes available every other Monday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
This is the 430 movie special report. Well, we probably didn't need to do that ebullient introduction because it's a rather sad day here at the 430 movie. As we speak, it's just come to light that the great Dick Donner has passed away at 91 years old. And we immediately threw away everything we had to do today so that we can record a special report and a tribute to the great Richard Donner.
We have to. I mean, he was not only the director of so many wonderful films from our youth and some great movies of our later young adulthood, but he was the link to live TV.
Yep.
One of those few directors who started in live TV and worked his way through the late 50s and all the 60s and all the shows we
all the 60s. Before we get to that,
all 10 of them. All 10 60s.
Before we get to that, I want to introduce you to your 430 movie hosts, Mr. Monday, Steve Melching.
Hi there.
On Tuesday, it's Darren Doctorman.
Here in this fortress of 430, we will learn together.
Wednesday, of course, is Ashley Edward Miller.
Mark, would you care to step outside?
And on Thursday, it's the Antichrist, Mark Altman. Hey,
can I redo mine? I meant to say I'm getting too old for this shit.
Yeah, let's go back.
Let's edit that back in.
Yeah, for the first time in the history of the podcast, we'll do it all again.
We don't have to. We'll just fly backwards around the world.
Fly backwards around the studio.
You're a funny guy.
You know, I got to tell you, and I want Darren to speak to the early career of Dick Donner. Before we do that, I want to say one of the things I loved about Richard Donner was in an age in which people bit their lip and did what their publicist told them to do and say what their publicist told them to say. He was always outspoken. He always, you always knew you're getting the unvarnished truth with him. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you watch those Superman documentaries where he's talking about what happened with Superman 2 and working with the Salkinds, there's no, he's not at a loss for words. He's not thinking about the diplomatic way to put it.
He doesn't dance around.
No, he doesn't. And I love that about him. He had that grovelly, no bullshit kind of voice. And it's really interesting because if you look at his career, he had a very long career before preparation meets opportunity and turns into success. And he never looked back at that point. But let's talk about where it all began for Dick Donner, as Darren talked about the early 50s.
Well, no, not the early 50s, but the late 50s, and
late
one
50s.
of his first credits, at least on IMDb, is the Zane Grey Theater, which was I believe a live on Kinescope show that was made. Also the June Allison show for DuPont, the Loretta Young show, all of these in the first years of the 1960s. When television was a baby, basically, in
its infancy. Yep.
Absolutely. And they were still figuring out how to do things. Now, sure, some of the techniques for the filmed television were still those used by the motion picture industry, though they were sped up a lot because even in those days, the schedules were very, very short and they had to crank out episodes. But he worked on tons of at least well-known shows to us because we were sort of on that on the pivot of reruns and original shows.
Yeah, but before we get to those sort of iconic shows, I want to point out he worked on one of our favorite shows. He did a bunch of them, which is Have Gun Will Travel.
Absolutely.
And in fact, when I was writing my book, The 50-Year Mission, the oral history of Star Trek, I tried to get Dick Donner because I really wanted to do more on Have Gun Will Travel.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to get him. And Ed Gross, who had interviewed him many, many times, wasn't able to get him. And of course, he also did 2 episodes of The Lieutenant.
Correct.
I knew Gene very well.
Yeah.
And I was disappointed not to get to speak to him. In fact, many years later, Bob Sallin was trying to get him to do our Star Trek podcast, Inglorious Treksperts, and much to his credit, he said no. Well, I mean, really, you don't talk to Dick Donner about, Gene Roddenberry and his peripheral connection to Star Trek. You talk to Dick Donner about his movies.
Well, one of the things we love about him was his straightforwardness and non-tolerance for bullshit, and that's what kept him off our show.
So true. So now, of course, as the 50s turn into the 60s, he does, as you alluded to, work on some legendary shows that we grew up on.
Well, let's not forget the episodes of Bounty Law that he directed with Cliff Booth and Rick Dalton.
Hey, speaking of which, did anyone read the novelization of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood yet?
Yes.
No, not yet.
Okay,
Is
so
it bananas?
It's bananas.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Fans of this podcast will love it. In fact, I said today on the Twitter, I said, this is the greatest.
The Twitter.
This is the greatest. This is the greatest novelization since Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek: The Motion Picture, because Gene Roddenberry wrote the novelization of the movie he wanted to see rather than the movie that was made. And in a way, Quentin sort of, there's a very little of the actual movie in there. It actually explains all the stuff in the movie that we didn't see,
right?
Which I loved. And then he indulges these long, drawn out side, like, the Aldo Ray stuff is unbelievable with Cliff Booth.
And you know what? It's dangerously close to painting a loving memory of Charlie Manson.
To be honest.
So, just to warn people, it's very interesting because it does fill in the blanks a lot about what's going on in the movie and what was going on in real life, maybe, to a point. But, the description of the stuntman's wife's death is freaking unbelievably amazing.
Yeah, I completely agree. And all the bounty law stuff is terrific.
Yeah.
And those are some of the best scenes in the movie, but he expands on them in a really interesting way. Now, it doesn't talk about the new humans or the fact that communicators are now in our heads, but it does talk about all this stuff on bounty law. And it has this very sweet ending, which obviously I'm not going to give away here. Although I will say the very ending of the book really pissed me off because the last page, it says, soon to be a hardcover special edition with extended prose. And I'm like, I just ran out and read this fucking book.
Yeah.
And I was like, and the last page is like, but the hardcover version's coming out with even more in it.
But you know what?
There's got to be deleted scenes.
There's deleted scenes in the book.
Mark, you got to admire it because it kind of sounds like something you might do.
That's true.
Well, Darren, when you put
Gotta
it like that, who am I to say? I don't know. Oh my God! But it's a wonderful, easy breezy read.
Yeah,
and I just loved it, and I loved it. And Cliff, I mean, obviously, the whole part at the beginning where Cliff Booth is talking about all his favorite foreign films, it's nuts. Because Cliff Booth doesn't like foreign movies. I don't believe that for a second. But it's just so self-indulgent in a deliriously delightful way. And to any of our listeners, including Steve and Ashley, I would run, don't walk to pick up the book because you'll absolutely love it.
It's been on my wish list since, for like a month. But back in my head, I thought there's got to be a hardcover of this coming out. Like, why would he just release an $8 paperback mass market of this? So that
as
I was kind
homage to the novelizations. And in fact, now that it's been announced, our good friend Steven Scarlatta, who did Jodorowsky's Dune and is the host of Best Movies Never Made, is doing a documentary on movie novelizations. I mean, which is going to be fantastic. I was actually thinking we should do a show about that on 430 Movie because, we especially growing up before VHS, we devoured, novelizations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, and there's a real difference between a good novelization like an Alan Dean Foster book and just a perfunctory, I hate to say it, but like James Caan, who did like E.T. and Poltergeist, where it's just literally.
Jimmy Caan write those novels?
Yeah, it was Jimmy Caan. He wrote it at the toll booth. So when somebody really expands upon the story and it goes much deeper and there are all these like scenes that you didn't see in the movie.
Did you know
all the sex in Star Trek: The Motion Picture?
Yeah. Did you know that the Godfather had a novelization?
Dude, crazy.
But it did, which always cracks me up. Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker had novelizations. So they already had the Ian Fleming book, but then they came out with James Bond 007 in Moonraker, which was a novelization of the movie, and obviously James Bond 007 in The Spy Who Loved Me, which was also a novelization.
Those books, the original novels, were so incredibly different from the movies that got made from them that you can see like why they needed a novelization. The Spy Who Loved Me in particular was just worlds apart. There's maybe one scene from that book that's in the movie, and I think it's the opening.
Well, if you want to know more about that, you should pick up
read.
Nobody Does It Better, the complete oral history of the James Bond films.
I just want to say the craziest, I found a movie novelization in a hotel room once. It was the novelization to The Greatest Story Ever Told. I found it in the nightstand.
That's funny, Steve. That's really funny. At the Marriott, it's amazing. They had that.
That's funny.
And the Book of Mormon.
Anyway, Richard Donner would have totally directed episodes of Bounty Law.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Richard Donner.
But in the meantime, what he actually did direct are a bunch of episodes of The Twilight Zone. Yeah. Sort of in the middle of the Twilight Zone run. And of course, the most famous one that he did was Nightmare at 20,000 Feet with William Shatner.
Here, quickly! There's a man out there.
What?
Look, he's crawling on... must have been the...
Bob? What is it?
Oh, it's nothing, Mrs. Wilson. Can I get you anything?
A glass of water.
Surely. Is something wrong?
No, I thought I saw something out there.
What?
Nothing.
Which is, obviously an iconic portrayal and an iconic episode of an iconic show. And
it's an iconic actor.
And given the fact it was remade by George Miller for the Twilight Zone movie, and as great as John Lithgow is, and that as much money as he had, and better creature design, the original is still better.
Yeah. Even though it's a dude wearing a literal rug, and I'm not talking about Shatner.
Watch yourself, boy.
I know, Bill. But it's just amazing, and the depth of Dick Donner's ability to go from genre to genre, it was unmatched. I mean, he, perhaps second only to Robert Wise for being able to do so many genres extremely well. Richard Donner was a master at it.
And getting the job done. I was just reading a tweet by Bill Shatner today about that episode of Twilight Zone where he said they had scheduled a 4-day shoot and they had to do it in 2.
Yeah.
And Donner was able to knock that out in 2 days.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But look, you guys can take your Twilight Zones and your Have Gun Will Travel and your classic television series. But to me, my experience with Dick Donner prior to what I think we'll spend most of our time talking about was on the Banana Splits Adventure Hour.
Yeah.
Danger Island.
Danger Island.
Chongo.
That really
come on. Chongo.
That prepared him to direct The Omen, clearly.
Absolutely. But just so many amazing, TV shows from that time. He did, 3 episodes of Gilligan's Island. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is completely unlike anything else that we sort of know him for. It's not a Western. It's not really a comedy. It's more like a farce, actually. It's just,
that wasn't the word I thought you were going to say.
I know what you thought I was going to say, but look, it's I love Gilligan's Island, and the tone that he helped set for that show is unmatched.
And he also did the episodes of Get Smart.
Absolutely.
Which is a terrific, also it's a very fine tone. You have to walk a certain line with that.
Yeah.
Because it's parody, but also at the same time, it commits to its own universe.
Yeah.
The spy stories, had to hold together, even though it was completely, that was the genius of Buck Henry and Mel Brooks on that show, obviously.
And then he transitioned to doing, when cop shows came into vogue. He did Cannon and Ironside and Kojak.
Yeah. All these shows that George Lucas bemoaned for replacing, mythology for kids. He said, now all kids have is Kojak, and what good is that?
I don't remember having Kojak when I was a kid.
Well, because you were way younger.
Having him. Yeah, that's true. I do remember the lollipop thing. I thought that
Who loves you, baby?
Yeah.
Right. And I do remember the cockatoo that what's his name?
That was Beretta. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I remember in Foul Play.
Don't do the crime if you can't do the time, my friends.
In Foul Play, the couple in the back of the car going, Kojak, bang, bang. But,
you know what? He was a journeyman. That's the thing. That's what they used to call it. Like, it's just directing people. It's like he managed a set. Like, he told the story. He got what he needed to get. He knew what he needed to get.
Like most of those early TV directors, they could do anything. They could be plugged into any genre, any sort of episode, any TV series, and they could turn on a dime. And they knew how to get the job done fast and efficient, and still with slide in a little bit of style here and there.
Well, pejoratively, the directors of that era were referred to as traffic cops.
Yeah,
because that's what TV directors were. They were given a certain amount of money, a certain amount of time. They just had to get it done. And it's funny because Dick Donner, who was very humble, would refer to himself throughout his career as a traffic cop. And Mel Gibson, sort of said, he would call himself a traffic cop, but he anything but. The great directors, obviously. And as you said, because he could so effortlessly move from genre to genre, he's not as famous as somebody like Spielberg or Hitchcock, who sort of became known for certain kinds of genres. I mean, Hitchcock became a household name because he was the master of suspense. And Donner could just effortlessly move from genre to genre. And I would say, even though today I was, saw it everywhere from CNN to Deadline to, for most people, I don't think they know outside of the cine world who Dick Donner is.
Right.
And I think that has a lot to do with the fact if he had been making superhero movies his whole career, people might know who he was. If he was making Lethal Weapons his whole career, people might know. But because he could go from a Lady Hawk, to, the Omen to Superman to Lady Hawk to, Timescape, Timeline, Time Awfulness. And the Lethal Weapon movies and all these different films, he can never be pigeonholed.
I think it seems like he just did what interested him at the time. He's like, I want to make this movie. I like it. I want to make it. And it's totally different from what I did last time. Yeah. It's
really interesting because if you look at the patronage system, in the old days, like for Mozart and a lot of these classical composers or artists, how they had a patron, a rich patron that would indulge everything that they did, and they would be able to do it because they had the patronage of rich people. Kubrick had that with Warner Brothers. Interestingly, Dick Donner sort of had that with Warner Brothers for a long time too. When he wanted to do Radio Flyer, they indulged it because he made so much money for them on other pictures. And, he spent most of his career there. And that's one of the things I think that's going to be really sad going forward with the way the studios are operating. Warner Brothers Discovery and a lot of these studios, it's that kind of patronage system where they would stick with a director whatever they wanted to do because they knew even if you lost money on this one, you'd make us money on the next one.
Well,
I think that's really gone away.
To be fair, Warner's was pretty alone in doing that. A lot of the other studios didn't go that far to be patrons to their directors. It was a little more difficult for other directors to sort of get that backing from a studio, but Warner Brothers was very good at doing that.
And that's the great thing about walking around on the Warner lot. Like, I have so many fond memories of wandering around like, oh, there's Silver Pictures, Joel Silver's office. And right across from Dick Donner, Lauren Schuler Donner Productions. And there's Clint Eastwood's Malpaso Productions. Yeah. And, it's like you can find all their offices, their bungalows scattered around the Warner lot.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I mean, Universal did it to a certain extent, and they did it in TV.
Yeah, mostly in TV because of their factory, and they just needed to crank out crappy shows.
But Donner and Eastwood and Silver have had those offices there for decades.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fixtures on the lot, and
even when they stopped doing stuff on a regular basis, to their credit, they would let a lot of these people keep their office and keep their development funds and things like that. They wouldn't be sort of shown the door, which is something now. It's like if you're not producing, you're gone.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the only people that Paramount kept on the lot, and then eventually they did kick him off, was Bob Evans.
Right.
And he should have been there till the day he died, but that didn't happen.
It's the whole industry has changed certainly over the last 30 years, but even in the last 10.
Oh yeah. Shit, the last 5.
Yeah. I mean, look, the streaming is, we've talked about this, transformative in the last, and the business is still, it's like an earthquake. I think we've had 4 shocks and the earthquake, but the aftershocks are still going on.
It's definitely sorting itself out.
Yeah. So anyway, so Dick Donner had this incredible career in television, and that would have been amazing enough.
Yeah.
But then he starts doing some, well-known MOWs.
Right. Movies of the week for those who don't know what that is.
Mo's.
And then he goes to England to do his first big feature.
Called The Omen in 1976.
But
what?
Sorry. I was just going to say, no, never mind.
The feel-good movie of the year?
Yeah, exactly.
For generations, The Thorns have been a family of tremendous wealth, position, and power. The perfect marriage of Ambassador Robert Thorne and his wife Catherine was fulfilled by the birth of their son, Damien. And then, when the child was 5 years old, something terrible happened. And then it happened again. Was it an accident? Was it murder? Was it a coincidence? Or was it an omen?
Look at me, Damien. It's all for you.
20th Century Fox presents a film of psychological suspense about an occurrence of earth-shaking importance. Gregory Peck, Lee Remick, The Omen.
I was at the hospital, Mr. Thorne, the night your son was born. I saw its mother. I saw its mother.
I have fears. I have fears.
What kind of fears? Its mother, Mr. Thorne.
You saw my wife.
Its mother.
What is it you're trying to say?
His mother was a...
This is not a human child. Make no mistake.
There are those who will die for him. There are those who will kill for him. Who is he? What does he want? Where did he come from? And can he be stopped? Gregory Peck, Lee Remick, The Omen. If this is the truth, where does it end?
Well, if I want the Antichrist to show up, I want it to happen like that.
It's all for you, Darren.
Yes.
What a great, look, it's not great art like Rosemary's Baby is, but it is a great pulp.
It's great pulpy. It's great pulpy action.
It's super effective. It's
intense.
Like a really simple story, well told. It's just, and it holds up.
And cut to the creepy kid.
Yeah, that always works, man.
And what elevates it, I think, besides obviously Jerry Goldsmith's Oscar Award winning score, are his cast like Gregory Peck and Lee Remick and David Warner. I mean, it really helps. Make it not feel like a B movie,
right?
And in terms of his approach, it's terrific. And all you have to do is watch Omen 2 to realize how great Omen 1 is,
right,
and how significant it was in terms of what Dick Donner did that was really so special.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that. Because this was his, first sort of big studio movie, he was being tested and tried on this to see, if they could use him more. And he proved himself immensely with it because it was, it made a lot of money, and it was widely considered an expert trip to the movies, basically. So it's really interesting that from all this, cop shows and comedies and sitcoms and all that sort of TV stuff, that he can sort of whip up this, really pretty frightening, intense movie, basically out of thin air.
Yeah, I mean, it might be considered, an attempt to cash in on The Exorcist, but he made something that, was unique in and of itself, and very successful, and created its own, creepy mood in its own franchise.
Yeah, there were a lot of attempts to recreate what was going on with The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby, and The Omen is really the only one I think that stood the test of time at all.
And I think you wouldn't have an ending like that today. I don't think.
No.
You'd have a movie in which Gregory Peck's trying to kill his own kid today. And I have to.
I don't think you'd have Gregory Peck in a movie today.
No, that's for sure.
Special report.
You might have Ethan Peck, but the other thing that if you need to see how brilliant Donner is, just watch the remake that Fox did a couple of years ago, which was where they literally used the same script. It was kind of like what they did for Psycho. It wasn't shot for shot, but it was the same script. They didn't, it wasn't like a remake where they wrote a new script. They pretty much used David Seltzer's script, verbatim, and it's unwatchable.
Yeah,
totally unwatchable.
As opposed to Donner's phenomenal version of The Omen. So it's very instructive to watch them in a side-by-side comparison. And Shout Factory did a very nice box set of all the Omen you ever need. It's Omen 1, and then it also has Omen 2, which is watchable. Omen 3, which is what it is.
It has Sam Neill in it.
It has Sam Neill as the grown-up Andy Grice.
A lot of really great jokes about the 7 daggers of Megiddo when I start talking about my children. So it gave me that.
Okay. And that's terrifying. And it also has the MOW, the Omen, the Awakening movie, and I think it has the remake in it. So again, a lot of movies you don't need. It's kind of like that Indiana Jones collection that just came out, but a few that are definitely worth having.
Right.
Totally.
So
I don't think I was too young to see the Omen when it came out. So I feel like my first exposure to it was on television, probably an afternoon movie, and it was creepy as hell.
Yeah, even in a small format, it's effective.
Oh yeah, that's how I saw it too. Nobody's taking me to see The Omen in 1976. I was not. I was seeing stuff like Logan's Run.
Right.
That was like rated G, but it had an orgy in it.
Very misleading.
So did the 70s.
Right. Well, you know what? Frozen had an orgy in it, so things haven't changed much.
Yeah.
Did I see the wrong version of that movie?
I think you might have seen a different one.
No. Oh, okay. So that's what Let It Go was about.
Oh.
So if we're ready to go there, let's talk about.
We're definitely ready.
Ready to go there.
Let's talk about the Salkinds basically seeing The Omen and saying, well, maybe this guy could do a big, giant superhero movie.
Well, they said one.
Maybe he'd be easy to work with.
He'll be appreciative for the gig.
Yeah.
He'll do what we say.
Yeah. He will be ours to control, like the Kwisatz Haderach. And they hire him to direct Superman 1 and 2. 1 and 2, both together and as one.
My friends, I'm not given to wild, unsupported statements. And I tell you that we must evacuate this planet immediately.
Jor-El, be reasonable.
Once there was a civilization, much like ours, but with a greater intelligence, greater powers, and a greater capacity for good. Tragic moment, that world was destroyed. But there was one survivor.
Now, wouldn't that beat all get out?
Because of the wisdom and compassion of Jor-El, because he knew the human race had the capacity for goodness, he sent us his only son. His name is Kal-El. He will call himself Clark Kent. But but the world will know him as Superman. This year, Superman brings you the gift of flight. Superman, the movie.
And he basically, he knew how to do it. He knew what the tone should be. He knew how to sort of tell this mythic tale with the anchor of reality. And I think it's still arguably, if not the best, one of the best superhero quote movies ever made.
Well, it's funny because earlier Steve mentioned Telly Savalas, right? So when you talk about Dick Donner knowing exactly what didn't work about that original script by Mario Puzo, it had scenes like Telly Savalas
showing up
and saying to Superman, "Who loves you, baby?" and offering him a lollipop. And Donner's like, "This is not Batman. This all needs to go."
Yeah.
And along with Tom Mankiewicz, they rewrote the script and made it what it is, which is an American immigrant story. And took a lot of the ridiculously over the top humor and jettisoned it and just kept the right humor, you know, the real humor that came out of character, that came out of story.
Where the most goofy you get is seeing Rex Reed in a revolving door.
Yeah, at the Daily News. Rex Reed, by the way, for you younger viewers, was the film critic at the New York Daily News, where the Daily Planet filmed its scenes in New York. Although largely most of the movie was filmed in the UK, there was some shooting it. Yeah, there was some shooting in Kansas, and then also in New York for the Daily Planet.
Well, they were in I think Alberta for
Canada,
right, for the Kansas scenes.
Speaking of Puzo, I had a film professor at USC who worked with Mario Puzo and said that he was a pain in the ass. Apparently, did not have nice things to say about him.
Well, yeah, I mean that, you know, who can blame him? You know, he wrote a hugely successful novel that was turned into a hugely successful film that he co-wrote the screenplay for. So, you know, why wouldn't he be, you know, full of himself and wanting to expand his influence, especially when, you know, the Salkinds were kowtowing to him because they wanted the big name. You know,
well, and that's the thing, when they greenlit the movie, they didn't have Warner Brothers as a distributor yet, I believe,
right?
And they didn't have the money, so they started hiring all these huge actors to try and, you know, do enough foreign pre-sales to sell the movie, and that's why you get Marlon Brando and Susanna York and at the time, you know, Gene Hackman, and because they needed all these huge stars in order to sell enough foreign territories that they could make the film. But there was always cash flow problems on that movie.
Yeah.
And that was a problem because, you know, ultimately led to Dick Donner being fired, not because of the job that he was doing, but they ran out of money.
They ran out of money and they couldn't make both films at the same time. You know, as much as they tried. And they got a lot of the second one done. Donner got a lot of the second one done. But they just sort of realized that they weren't going to be able to finish both. So they had to knuckle down and just concentrate on the first one and release it and, you know, hope that the buzz would be enough to get money for finishing the second one.
And then when they had their chance, when it was a huge success, they didn't bring him back to finish the second one because it was so much bad blood. They bring back Richard Lester, who they had worked with and who kowtowed to them on Three Musketeers and Four Musketeers, which they had the same plan on, the same cunning plan to shoot at the same time. And, you know, it's really sad. I mean, and Gene Hackman talks about the fact he never met Richard Lester. Yeah. All the Gene Hackman, Lex Luthor stuff was shot by Dick Donner, and he doesn't get a credit on Superman 2.
That's right. That's right.
And then Richard Lester started reshooting a bunch of stuff just because he wanted the sole credit.
Right.
And that's why so much of Superman 2 is so silly, because it's the Richard Lester who did Hard Day's Night as opposed to the gritty kind of Richard Donner stuff that works so well in Superman 1.
Now, to be fair, I like Superman 2, the Richard Lester version. I enjoy it. It's not perfect. It's not as realistic as Superman 1. But it is enjoyable. And, you know, the stuff that is a little more comic booky still kind of work within that structure. But it is a little bit wankier.
When I was a kid, I loved Superman 2 up and down, man. Like,
so did I, as a kid.
Yeah.
As a kid, I love Superman. I like Superman 2 more than Superman 1 as a kid.
Mm-hmm. I've been working out.
But, you know, I mean, I think if you look at that fight scene outside the Daily Planet, it's terrible. And it's not because of special effects. It's just not well shot.
And yet, terrible, yet awesome.
But I rewatched the Donner cut of Superman 2 recently, and I have to say, Darren's shaking his head. I just think it's superior in so many ways. Other than the fact that you lose that wonderful line, General Care to step outside. Instead it's like, don't you believe in freedom of the press, which is a terrible line. But that's all the stuff about it in Niagara Falls, so much better in the Donner cut.
I never thought my cut would see the light of day, and maybe rightly so. You know, the picture came out. It was what it was. It wasn't the original director's cut, but it was a fellow, I forget his name on purpose, who took over. It was 25 years ago. And then one day Michael THOR called me and said, listen, there really is a internet movement afoot that they want to see your cut. I said, I wouldn't know where to start. He said, well, I'd love to do it. I said, hey, all the people, you're the right guy, go do it. And then he told me the studio was cooperating and that they were going to do it. And it was exciting to me. I kind of forgot it. And when I realized it was really going to happen, it was, quite anticipatory.
Reconstructing this film is not only rare, but it's probably unique in film history. I don't think there is a film that had so much footage shot and not used, and the opportunity of putting this back together is the best job I could ever have in my life. Superman 1 and 2 were shot simultaneously, not back to back, and Dick was working off of an enormous script. And so when they were in the Daily Planet set, Donner shot out all his scenes from Superman 1 and then shot out scenes from Superman 2. So think about just keeping track of continuity between the two films that are not sequels, but a part 1 and part 2 of the same story.
When I look at it now, I like it. I'm a little embarrassed by things, but I have to take myself back 25 years and see it, why I did it then and how I did it then, not knowing what I know now.
Dick shot most of his shooting script for Superman 2 before they had to stop shooting Superman 2 so they could make the release date on Superman 1. So Lester had most of the film to start out with. And also, they didn't want to include Marlon Brando for financial reasons. So Richard Lester needed to rewrite the Brando stuff. They also probably looked at the cut that Stewart had put together of Superman 2 and decided to change certain things for whatever reasons.
When I got started on this, I didn't know what to expect, but I wanted to see that old footage.
Well, somewhere in there is the right version of the movie.
The problem is that Donner didn't get to shoot the hotel stuff for real.
Yeah,
so we basically get the screen tests in the Donner cut, which I think isn't as good, and obviously it would have gotten better. But
I think it's so much better.
It's too up and down for me. It's very inconsistent, and it's not his fault. I think it has a little bit to do with the editing on it, but I just can't go there. I was very disappointed with the Donner cut.
It's so much more interesting. I think it's so much more interesting. It's so much grittier and more realistic. And that scene in particular, it makes a lot more sense. You know, that it makes Lois Lane look smart using blanks and the gun. Now, of course, they don't have the footage, so the scene's never going to be what it can be. Yeah. But the scene on the page is fantastic, and it's conveying what was on the page, which was inspired. You know, I think the fact that they had to use, of course, they had to use the screen test. But, that's what they had to work with. I really like the Donner cut. I prefer it.
All right.
So anyway. So, but look, I think we got to, again, talk about, this is a movie that was transformative.
Yeah.
We got to remember what superhero movies were, and TV was like. It was Legends of the Superheroes on CBS. It was Captain America with Red Brown.
Yeah.
This was what superheroes were. And, as much as we love it, it was Batman 66.
Right.
Which was,
this was an epochal movie. It totally redefined what that genre is. And for the longest time, like, it seemed like you would not be able to pull that trick off again. I mean, it sort of stood alone. In fact, it didn't seem like even Superman movies could repeat the trick of Superman the movie.
And they didn't.
Yeah, they did not.
I don't think Superman's ever been done better on film, since this is by far the best interpretation of Superman on the big screen for my money. And Superman doesn't even appear in the movie until about the 45-minute mark?
Yeah.
It's not even close. Man of Steel is a joke. I mean, they don't get what the appeal of Superman is. I mean, Dick Donner fundamentally, it's the same way Harv Bennett knew what Star Trek was, even though he wasn't a Star Trek fan.
Right.
He understood from watching it. And Dick Donner fundamentally understood what Superman is. And, that was what was so great about it. And that's why people keep paying homage to it. And even when Superman Returns, as much of a misfire as that is in so many ways, went back. And the fact that he cast Christopher Reeve when they wanted to cast Robert Redford and all these ridiculous ideas, that he found Christopher Reeve, he instinctively knew exactly who Superman and Clark Kent was.
Yeah. And Superman, I think, in my opinion, Superman is a fairy tale for children that's aspirational and positive, and this idea of trying to take all the stuff we loved as children and make it adult, and meaning dark and violent and stuff, it feels really wrong-headed a lot of the time. It's like we don't want to accept the fact that we've grown up, or that the stuff we loved as children, isn't. I don't know. What am I trying to say?
It's the feeling that the people making the new movies are embarrassed about liking Superman.
Yeah.
And they feel that it's downgrading if you enjoy something that you enjoyed as a kid. And the fact that they can't quite get that balance of having something there for kids, yet something that adults would enjoy as well.
It's a children's story, but you're not insulting a child. You're not insulting a kid's intelligence. You're not talking down to them
or the adults
in a movie like this. Yeah,
well, I both agree and completely disagree. Here's where I agree. I do think that that there is, I think, a lack of balance is probably the right way of saying it. I think kind of on the other side of that balance was never achieved. Again, kind of in the other direction. I don't know that Superman 3 or Superman 4 were necessarily, moves like in a better direction. But I do think it's like we were just talking about Superman 2. When we were kids, we really loved Superman 2. It's like for the same reason why I liked, you guys I know still love Batman 66. But like when I was a kid, I thought Batman 66 was really awesome and dark and scary because I didn't freaking get it. Like, so what you're talking about, I don't think it's about being embarrassed. I think it's about accessing the way that something made you feel about a thing when you were a certain age because it reached you in a certain way, and you still want it to reach you in that way. And I think that's the difference. But you look at the first 45 minutes of Superman the movie, it's frankly, I think, the best 45 minutes of any superhero movie ever produced. It's easily the best 45 minutes of Superman, any iteration ever produced. I think the movie that follows after that in Metropolis is largely kind of silly. But those first 45 minutes are amazing. Right?
No, I disagree. Okay, I think up until the helicopter rescue, that movie is pitch perfect.
Okay, you know what? I agree. I'm with you. Actually, I'm with you. Like up until the helicopter rescue, and I think it's like once we're kind of past that, like it's a little, it loses its way a little bit. It loses that emotional grounding. But I don't think that saying that something can be.
It just turns into a different movie. It turns into the Lex Luthor movie after that.
It turns into a movie that people think is for kids. Right. As opposed to the movie that is like, oh, right, I get what this is. Like, and I can be passionate about this. It's like it starts winking at itself. And I think that's the problem. And there is somewhere a happy medium between fucking winking at everything and things having no weight. And things having to be dark all the damn time. And I don't know if that's about adulthood or childhood. I just think that's about good storytelling.
Ashley, you want to see a long arm? What is
like a really very long arm?
Is this the porn version? Because no.
Look, here's the thing. Where I disagree with what you disagree with us. It's not about how we felt about this as children. I think you can go dark with Batman because Batman psychologically is fundamentally a dark character. His parents were killed. Superman is the immigrant story. It's a guy who avoids this genocide, his entire planet being obliterated, and is sent to Earth where he can redeem himself by doing good. But the immigrant who comes and who makes something of himself and is able to accomplish all these great things for the good of humanity. That's why Superman 4 is kind of flawed, because obviously it goes too far. I'm going to get rid of all nuclear weapons, right? Because there's a fine line with Superman that you can't cross. That's why it's so hard, why people have struggled with this character so many times, because it's very hard to find that nuance. Whereas, Batman, you can't go too dark. You can do the Killing Joke. You can do, because it's just, he's a dark, fucked up protagonist, right? But I think with Superman, you can't do that. So when you have him snapping Zod's neck, it's like, really?
There's a fundamental goodness and decentness and earnestness to Superman. That's fundamental to who he is as a character.
Yeah.
And turning him into some angst-ridden, character it just doesn't feel true.
He's not just a Man of Steel physically. He's a Man of Steel emotionally as well.
He just wants to be normal. He wants to be Clark Kent.
We just finished saying that the best 45 minutes was the opening 45 minutes. Was and that what made that sing was that conflict that existed inside of Clark Kent. What Donner brought out, of all of those actors, that family kind of struggling with that thing. And you knew that this was a good kid.
He's not Superman yet. He's becoming Superman in that 45 minutes.
But actually,
if he grows into a character who no longer has any internal conflict over anything, then he's not a character anymore. And we're not really telling a story anymore. We're just watching things happen.
He does have conflict, but the conflict is to keep doing his best while not endangering people around him.
Sure. And that's not me saying that it's I think he should be out doing what Batman does. That's not it at all.
I think the first 45 minutes are great, but that moment when he flies up and catches the helicopter and Lois Lane is the most lump in your throat moment ever. It brings all this joy and all this hope and all this fun together in one moment.
Well, a lot of that is John Williams.
That was a bad outfit.
It was. Most of it is John Williams, but it also is the images and the way it's put together and the pacing and how it builds up. It builds up the tension. It builds up the tension and then releases it in a marvelous denouement moment. So.
And then when he flies off and stops all these other crimes.
Yeah. He flies off and goes into a Kojak movie. And he goes off into, into these, various sort of twists on the genre that sort of dances around how you handle a superhero movie.
Yeah. Anyway. Well, look, I think we can all agree Richard Donner's Superman is a masterpiece.
Superman's pretty good. I think we can agree.
It paved the way for what superhero movies would become. Yeah. And, obviously it was a huge influence on, I think, Kevin Feige. Clearly it was a huge influence on Bryan Singer. It was a big influence on all of us. Yeah. So I'm curious, when you were writing X-Men First Class, if you ever talked about Superman.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, sort of not telling tales out of school, but there was something very interesting that he said about having this feeling like watching a cut of the movie and going, "Oh God, I made the wrong movie." That you can have so much love and reverence for a film that when you're attempting to pay homage, you accidentally end up doing karaoke.
Right.
And I think ultimately that was the problem with Superman Returns. I think there's a lot of great stuff in Superman Returns. I love the audacity of a lot of it. I love the idea of the kid. I love the reveal of the kid. I love the fact that like the way that you learn the kid has powers is because he shoves that piano across the yacht to protect his mom. Like, I love that, right? But I think it's also problematic that, oh God, why the hell am I blanking? He was in Sonic the Hedgehog. James Marsden, Cyclops, like that he was the most heroic character, period, in that film, which I find fascinating because he was the one who kind of put everything out on the line. But yeah, it's interesting, right? The way that we treat these things that we love from our childhood. And again, bringing it back to Dick Donner, the fact that he didn't have a dog in the hunt, right? And whether it was like this reverence for Superman as a character or for a particular set of films, he wasn't kissing ass to the Salkinds because he didn't owe them anything, that he was just making the best damn movie that he thought that he could make. Like, that just shows through, in every frame of that film, even the frames I don't like quite as much. It's like, let's put it this way. The thing that's genius about Richard Donner's Superman is not that you will believe a man can fly. The thing that's genius about it is that you will watch a man fly backwards around the planet to make time reverse itself, and you'll think it's fine. You just won't care. It'll work, right? It's like, you'll let him get away with it. That's what makes Superman a great movie. Because frankly, like, I'm trying to imagine reshooting that movie, like reshooting that script word for word and trying to pull that off. Never. But somehow it works.
Well, it's time to feed the babies. So before we move off from Superman, I just want to ask Darren, I think one of the things that's extraordinary is also the way he dealt with actors. Actors love Dick Donner. And when you think about the big personalities that he had to navigate on that movie, you had Marlon Brando, who wanted to play the role as a suitcase. And literally just do a voiceover after being paid millions of dollars to play the role of Jor-El. Yep. And then you have Gene Hackman, who decided that Lex Luthor should have a mustache.
Oh my God. And it's one of my favorite stories. Gene Hackman, of course, had been, star in a couple of big movies, The French Connection and hell, there was another one in the early 70s. Anyway, but his conversation, but his trademark was his mustache, right? Or at least he thought it was. And he said, "No, I'm not gonna shave my mustache. Why would I do that?" And so Richard Donner, he had a meeting with him, and he said, "Look, trust me. If you come to set with your mustache shaved, I will shave mine off too." And Hackman said, "You feel that strongly about it?" And he said, "I absolutely do." So on the day they, show up on stage, Hackman shows up, his mustache is shaved, and he says, "All right, now you promised you were gonna shave yours off too." And so Donner goes and removes his fake mustache that he had gone into the meeting with, and he completely tricked him. And apparently Hackman laughed and said, "You son of a bitch!" But he got him to do it, and it's just one of these things that Donner was great at dealing with people and actors, and they aren't always the same. So it's a fascinating story from a movie that is filled with fascinating stories.
It was Day of the Dolphin.
That was Day of the
Dolphin. Yeah, it's a fabulous story. So, of course, post Superman, he continues to just have a string of huge hits. Obviously, The Goonies is a beloved picture from the 80s. Fondly remembered by many kids. Our good friend Sarah Watson just shot a pilot about the making of that film. I wish he had. Which I wish had gotten picked up, because I'm sure it would have been fascinating.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg presents The Goonies, a Richard Donner film.
Time, chunk. Hey, Mike found the map. Whoa, do you guys realize what we could do? I don't want to go on any more of your crazy Goonie adventures.
Meet Mikey.
I gotta go to the bathroom.
Brand.
Handy.
Shame. Come on, Fran. Slip her the tongue.
That's disgusting. No, I can't even look.
Mouth.
I gotcha. Now get out from behind there. You're ruining the painting. You're ruining my joke.
Stephanie. Data.
Booty banger. Oh, guys, isn't that neat?
And Chunk.
It's locked. Thanks, Chunk.
They call themselves the Goonies. They've stumbled onto a legend, but they're not alone.
Chunk, I hope that was your stomach.
No. That's the it. Sounds like Kong.
Discover what they uncover.
It was full of rubies and emeralds and diamonds.
The lost map.
Oh, this started the tunnel.
The secret caves.
Hey, Mikey! You can hear me! Run! Run! They're coming after you! Juggler!
The hidden clues.
Mikey!
The treacherous traps.
Hello, Sheriff. I'm at the Lighthouse Lounge, and I want to report a murder.
Just like that last prank about all those little creatures that multiply when you throw water on them.
Take the oath.
They're here! Somebody's coming!
Join the adventure. As Steven Spielberg presents The Goonies, a Richard Donner film.
Why is Goonies so popular? Because it's a pretty goofy film.
It's awesome. That's why. Because it's a great Goonie adventure. That's why.
Goonies
It's a great sort of when you're a kid. It's a great wish fulfillment movie for kids of a certain age. And I was a little too old for it. I was 17 when it came out and saw it opening weekend and was sorely disappointed by it. Even though I had my own group of Goonie friends when I was a few years younger, and we went everywhere on our bicycles and wanted to get into adventures. So it seemed like the perfect movie, but it's pretty damn goofy. I was a little too old for it. But
think about it this way: it's Thanos goes on an adventure with Samwise Gamgee and Short Round.
Yeah. No, it's so
only
funny,
in
Steve.
Retrospect, though, Ashley. Only in retrospect.
It's so funny, Steve, because I'm completely simpatico with you, which in no way denigrates Goonies. I was a little too old at that point for Goonies.
Me too.
And on paper, it should have been my favorite movie. And I watched it again recently with my kids, and I really enjoyed it a lot more than I think I ever did before. But I understand why people love it.
It's very well made. It just wasn't for us. We were the wrong target. It was made for Ashley. It wasn't made for us.
That's right.
And it's enjoyable. I enjoy watching it. And, I like the Cyndi Lauper song and all that stuff. It's fun. Yeah, it's a fun movie.
I won't go
love
that far, but yes.
The location work. I love the location where they shot it. It's gorgeous.
Hey, you guys! Sloth is awesome. Sloth pulls off it. He opens up his shirt. He's got like the Superman shirt underneath. I mean, Donner is self-referential in there.
Yeah.
The bad outfit.
Yeah.
And, and of course, I have an embarrassing admission to make. I actually prefer Lethal Weapon 2 to Lethal Weapon.
So do I.
You know what? I think you're right.
Diplomatic immunity.
Just been revoked.
He pulls the house off a mountain.
Yeah.
Who is it?
Police, open up.
How do I know you're the police?
After I shoot you through the door, you can examine the bullet. Open up.
Mel Gibson. Danny Glover.
Come on, let's go, Raj.
Oh,
no, shit, let's go. Come on, Raj, don't be a killjoy.
Come on, we're back.
We're bad. You're black. I'm mad. Come on, man.
Hey, listen. If we're going, shouldn't I have a gun?
No.
Now, get ready for something lethal.
I'm surprised you haven't heard about me. I got a bad reputation. Sometimes I just go nuts like now.
Because the magic
Gun!
is back.
Mark, knock the windows open! You all right, man?
Yeah, I'm okay. Where were you, man? You're my partner or what? Why didn't you follow me down?
Yeah, why didn't you follow him down?
Shut up! I'm 7 floors up!
Lethal Weapon 2.
You go first. I'm really too old for this.
You go first. I'll cover you.
Eeny, meeny, miny.
Good police work, officer.
Come on.
No.
Back to my place. Hey, I'll even cook.
You're lucky. I have to live with that.
You're not gonna make it.
I'm gonna make it.
No, there's not enough room.
You were right, you know. Yeah, there wasn't enough room.
Lethal Weapon 2. This time, they're not taking any crap.
Just get off me, man. I don't want anybody to see us like that.
It's awesome.
It's awesome, and Joss Ackland is so great as the villain in that. It's just fun.
I think what's going on in that movie is that Donner, I think, was more confident with what he wanted to make in that film than he was initially on Lethal Weapon. I still, I'm trying to. It's like the holy grail to me is getting my hands on Shane Black's original draft for that film, which I know which I know is quite different. I think had a different title, and for some reason I'm blanking on it right now. But the thing about Lethal Weapon 2 is it set a pattern for the other Lethal Weapon movies that made them increasingly bad. Because they became obsessed with kind of holding on to characters or perpetuating characters who had no business being in those films. Like Lethal Weapon 3, they're back, they're bad, it sucked, I'm mad. It's
Look, that was the story of the 80s. Everything was always frozen in amber. If something worked, just do it exactly the same. Another 48 hours, just do it again exactly the same way. Beverly Hills Cop 2, do it the same way. It was the same thing with Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon 3, it's like, we're going to keep Leo Getz around and Rene Russo, and we're just going to do it again in Lethal Weapon 4, and they just get progressively worse and worse. But Lethal Weapon 2 is so much fun.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with you. And they have great chemistry. I mean, Mel Gibson and Danny Glover have great chemistry together.
Yeah. By the way, what's cool about, maybe I'm misremembering this. I don't think I am. That the Lethal Weapon 2 wasn't greenlit based on Lethal Weapon's box office. That it was greenlit based on Lethal Weapon's performance on home video.
I think that's true.
Yeah, like box office wise, it wasn't a big hit, but on home video, it was a monster. Yeah, it was like 24 of its time.
Yeah, I didn't love it because Mitchell Ryan didn't scare me because I kept thinking that's Riker's dad. He's not Mr. What was his name, Mr.?
Oh, this is all we have left.
I'm like, what's Riker's dad doing? So
he's gonna have a fight with him.
With jumper cables or whatever.
But I always think of the first one as starring Danny Glover, Mel Gibson, and a saxophone.
Because it was Eric Clapton and Michael Kamen, and it was an interesting score too. And speaking of interesting scores, let's talk about another movie that people love that I'm not a fan of, Lady Hawk.
He was a pickpocket who thought that anything was better than prison. Little did he know what he'd escaped from wasn't half as strange or frightening as what he'd stumbled into.
I do not believe what I believe, Lord. These are magical, unexplainable matters, and I beg you not to make me a part of them.
The knight who had saved him wanted only two things: to free his lover and to take his revenge.
I have waited almost 2 years for a sign from God.
Sir, the truth is I talk to God all the time. And no offense, but he never mentioned you.
The pickpocket was the key to his plan. But would you send a thief to guard your treasure? He was the last one in the world to act like a hero. It just happened by itself. And he was drawn into a magical, romantic adventure. Matthew Broderick, Michelle Pfeiffer, Rutger Hauer, Lady Hawk.
Yeah, you're wrong. But I love that movie. I love that
movie.
And in fact, if I need to make my wife feel happy about life, the universe, and everything, like Lady Hawk is generally like a winner to pop in there. I don't know that it's like one of the greatest action movies ever made, or I don't know that it's like one of the greatest fantasy movies ever made by any stretch of the imagination. But it's incredibly charming. And Rutger Hauer is awesome.
Matthew Broderick, not so much.
Matthew Broderick, maybe not so much, but Rutger Hauer, come on.
And that score.
Yes. Oh my God, the score.
I know they were trying to do something different by putting a contemporary score in, but there's a reason you don't score fantasy movies with a contemporary score.
Actually, I love that score.
Yeah,
I love that score.
We know.
It's like, why not?
The title of this episode is Ashley loves about 33% more than we do about Richard Donner's movies.
Yeah, Lady Hawk is the one I have a complicated relationship with. As I was deep in my Dungeons and Dragons phase, I was excited to see, a fantasy medieval style movie, and there was a pre-screening of it in the nearest city for like a free screening for some reason. So I carpooled down there with my high school friends, and I was sitting in the theater, the big theater where I had seen, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Return of the Jedi, and suddenly I see walking to take her seat down front is the girl I had a huge crush on with another dude from another school.
Yeah.
Oh,
so the whole movie, I'm like, oh, who's she with? She has a boyfriend.
She's with Rutger Hauer.
Yeah, I was so bummed. I couldn't watch the movie again until last year was the first time I had watched Lady Hawk since 1985.
That was traumatizing.
That's a lot of pain.
It was.
Do you need a hug?
It's like the kids say today, you were triggered.
I was triggered. Yeah.
You needed a safe space.
Yeah.
So
wow, Steve.
You retreated to Star Trek episodes or something where you would never find girls.
Yes.
Ain't that the truth? So, wow. Okay. So, So, Ashley, what else do you love of Richard? Time band? Not timeline? Time.
No, Scrooge.
No.
Scrooge is
pretty fun.
You're right. Scrooge is great. I love
Bill
Scrooge.
Murray is a great performance. Is his version of Scrooge?
It's a great adaptation of Christmas Carol with Bill Murray. Super fun.
And let's talk about Radio Flyer.
Oh, why?
Just because it's a fascinating experiment.
Okay.
It's obviously.
So is LSD.
I know some people who are incredibly moved and affected by this story. There's something there. It's not for me, but I think it is handled sort of very very well, very deftly, and it's a complicated story to tell. Child abuse is not it's not a fun topic, Ashley. No matter how much it goes through your head, you know what I mean.
So anyway, Dick Donner, as you said, so many different genres.
Yeah.
So much success in his career. He also was a producer on many films.
The Lost Boys is a executive producer on The Lost Boys, another iconic 80s movie.
Yep, absolutely. Directed by Joel Schumacher, that Donner produced. And
that movie almost convinced me that Batman Forever was going to be cool.
And that one also starred a saxophone, Steve.
Yes. And we got to see the man behind the sax.
The sweaty
muscular sax man. I really like The Lost Boys. Like I liked it when it came out, and then I went through a period where I don't like The Lost Boys. I love it. I watch it every year.
Yeah.
It's totally fun. It's great cast.
Yeah. It's like The Lost Boys and Near Dark would be a great double feature.
I think Near Dark is finally coming to Blu-ray, by the way.
Oh, praise God.
Near Dark is on Blu-ray. It's coming to 4K.
Oh, 4K.
Near Dark
it went out of print, I think.
Well, I have it.
It's an import or something, isn't it?
Shout Factory put it out years ago, but now it's being released in 4K.
Nice,
which is great because Near Dark is great, unlike Lost Boys, which is okay. I've never understood the love for Lost Boys.
It's a super entertaining, just a fun vampire movie.
It's St. Elmo's Fire with vampires.
It's the problem with Santa Clara. All the damn vampires.
That was another movie that I thought I was going to love. I'm like, oh, this is cool. This sort of postmodern vampire movie and all these cool people and
the Coreys
and Kiefer and Jamie Getz, who was like in everything. And Jamie Gertz.
You're confused with Bernie Getz.
Yeah. So
I was Bernie once. Bernie Getz.
I thought it was going to be, I forgive her for Solar Babies, but it was. I thought it was going to be better than it was, but I understand people love it. I have it on Blu-ray. One day I'll watch it again. Maybe I'll like it more. I don't know. Anyway, Dick Donner is a wonderful, 91 years old.
A wonderful career, a wonderful eye, a wonderful sense of storytelling.
He had 2 of them.
Thank you.
We got to finish the show.
We got to finish the show.
I can't listen to Ashley anymore.
We've got to stop it
before he kills again. But I'm really glad we were able to do this tribute to the great Dick Donner. There was talk of him doing another movie. He had plenty of films in development. There was hope that he would do Lethal Weapon 5 one day. Obviously, that never came to pass. But look, he's somebody that we revere. And, and in this business, to have a career as long as he had and still have people like you and speak well of you is a real testament to his integrity and class. And he will definitely be missed.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
He taught us that there's a man on the wing of the plane, that you'll believe a man can fly
on the wing of a plane.
And they'll always F you at the drive-thru. True words were never spoken.
Which we quote on an almost monthly basis around here. F us at the drive-thru.
So anyway, I want to thank you, gentlemen. Daren Dochterman, Steve Melching, Ashley, not so much. Ashley Miller. No, I'm kidding. It's only because he moved away. I'm taking out my pain and my anguish. But if you're a fan of the 430 movie, you may want to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. I don't know what we've been doing right lately, but the listenership continues to go up. I love seeing that. So keep listening. Keep telling your friends to listen to 430 movie. There are a lot of movie podcasts out there, but we don't charge for ours. So
we're free.
Listen.
Yeah,
we're free, and you should check us out.
You can also for nothing.
The chicks are for free, and then you should also check us out on Electric Now, where you can download the free Electric Now streaming app and watch us on Electric Now. Electric Now is the home of episodes of Leverage, the Librarians, and of course, really exciting stuff. They just added a bunch of old Looney Tunes classic cartoons like Betty Boop, as well as Flash Gordon serials. I know, which is so cool. I'm so excited.
No, not that one.
I know, but I want to sing it anyway.
There's some really cool things happening at Electric Now, so you should check that out. And, of course, you should listen to our sister podcast, Inglorious Trexperts, where we just did a fascinating deep dive into Gene Roddenberry's and the studio's notes for Star Trek 3, which has been apparently more controversial than I thought. I don't know if you saw. Somebody said that they're not going to listen to the podcast until we finish because they were so offended that we would in any way besmirch Star Trek 3, which I don't understand. I'm really interested in people who have opinions that are different, right? You know, I mean, wouldn't it be boring if everybody just agreed with us all the time?
Absolutely.
Right? That's why
we have Ashley.
That's right.
Yeah. So, but this person can't even hates the thought that we would in any way, we don't even I think we made a big point of saying we kind of like think Star Trek 3 is goofy fun, but isn't this interesting to see what the studio and what Gene had to say? They can't even handle that.
No, the purpose of that was not to bash Star Trek 3. What I find most interesting about it is like that there is no way that we could win with those episodes because either it's like, just take me, for example. It's either, oh, well, thank God, Ashley is sort of defending Star Trek 3, or Ashley is beating up on Gene Roddenberry.
I found it. I find it fascinating. It's so interesting. The disparity of opinions, because I think those are two spectacular shows, and really, really interesting. But I'm just so fascinated that someone would feel, and I'm sure this is true of other people, that, well, if they're going to disagree with me, I'm not interested in hearing. And it isn't even us; it's Gene Roddenberry, really. So
we're just reporting.
They would be so horrified that they wouldn't even want to listen. I would think they'd want to see how their opinions stack up against ours. Like, in all seriousness, like I'm fascinated by hearing, Ashley talk about Lady Hawk and why he loves it.
Yeah,
like that's interesting to me
because I want to find out why. Because maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, and I mean, honestly, I probably will go watch The Lost Boys again after hearing you guys extol its virtues. Say, was I missing something? It would be the first time I went back to a movie I didn't like or love and really liked it a lot more the second time or the eighth time or whatever. So, I don't know. I'm just fascinated by the fact that people would be so set in their ways that they have no interest in hearing. I mean, it's the same thing that's happening in politics.
Well, remember, exactly. It's Twitter, right? It's on Twitter. You're finding people who are triggered by anything that exists outside of their validation bubble.
Right.
So anything that you say that does not
can and will be used against you.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the kinds of responses that we're going to get. I think that for the most part, the vast majority of the listenership was sitting around listening, going, wow, that's really interesting that he said that. And it's really interesting that it maybe meant this or that. But the people who are going to respond are responding because something got activated.
Yeah. The fringe are the loudest always. So
my favorite is when they say, well, I'm not going to listen to the podcast until this is over. And it's like as though somehow we're all going to tremble in fear that we won't have that download this week. What are we going to do? How will we survive? I just like, that's the great thing I've always said about us not charging for the podcast and not doing Patreon.
Yeah.
We don't have to entertain you. Right. We just have to entertain ourselves. If 3 people listen to it, it's fine.
It's just a conversation. It's a conversation we would have anyway.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, and then they say, oh, well, that's awfully arrogant. I don't think so. But that's just...
Then you know what? Don't listen. That's fine. There's plenty of other stuff out there.
That's right.
Plenty of other people to listen to. I'm amazed. I read an article today about this Joe Rogan, who I've never listened to. Man, people love that guy.
But I've listened to him. I think he's fun.
I got to listen to that because I've been reading about it for a long time. But there was a big article, I guess, in the New York Times. And it's just like, I'm just curious. It sounds like sort of am I right in saying it's like the Howard Stern of today? Like,
not exactly. I mean, Howard Stern has, been good at doing interviews, but I think Joe Rogan is naturally very curious about all sorts of points of view, and he brings in a lot of sort of divergent opinions and thoughts about stuff, and it's very interesting.
Well, he's not on the Electric Surge Network, Electric Now, but I'm just curious.
He has plenty of listeners already.
Yeah, he doesn't
right. His downloads are doing okay.
Doing pretty good. Anyway,
okay.
It's interesting, and much like we try to bring in opinions about stuff to talk about because it's fun.
Yeah. And I think we like to hear feedback from our listeners. Like, I'm sure we're going to get an earful about, the Goonies. Like
probably.
Why people like.
Oh,
that's
we
totally
will.
fine. Like, I want to hear it. I don't want to. It's just the movie wasn't made for me.
All my Twitter sock puppets are going to be kicking your ass.
And of course, Steve, that's a perfect segue. If you want to talk about things you've heard on the podcast, you can visit us on Twitter at 430 Movie Pod or podcast, 430 Movie Podcast. Also on Instagram, where we have a wonderfully curated feed of stuff by Patrick Macias, doing a great job. And of course, on Facebook, you can also visit the 430 Movie page, where we recently posted all the picks for the last 4 seasons.
Wow.
It's already out of date, but you can check out all our picks for the last 4 seasons. And of course, this podcast wouldn't exist without the hard work of our sound engineer, the great Bill Ritter, his young apprentice, Mark Rivera, who is just our number one fan, has done such a great job. We're so appreciative to Mark for all his hard work. And of course, our producer, Natalie Miscali, our associate producer, Peter Holstrom, and Zach Ragatz, and our video producer, Dylan Middlebrook. You guys are all fantastic. Ashley, you don't have to go to the bathroom. I can keep going, right? Yeah. I didn't realize the last time that I was rambling on and you had to go to the...
I was dying.
Code yellow.
I had no idea.
Yellow.
I missed that in the chat. And
Yellow
I'm just
alert.
going on oblivious to the fact that Ashley is like
about to go all Tycho Brahe in the middle of the podcast and
look like Alien or something. So anyway, we're very appreciative to our friends at Electric Entertainment, make the show possible, and of course all of you who listen despite us having a view that might be somewhat different than your having opinions. Yes, indeed. So anyway, until next week, where we'll be doing, I'm going to share a secret with you. Next week's episode, don't do it, right? Don't tell him. Should I tell him what next week is?
Go ahead, tell him.
Tell him, Jim.
Tell him, Jim.
Summer movies. Next week,
summertime.
Join us with Living's Easy. Or maybe it's just about summer loving.
It happens so fast.
All right.
Or maybe it's about Corvette summer. We don't know. We'll find out when you join us next Friday for an all-new episode of the 430 Movie. Until then, Eyewitness News starts now.
This show is produced by Dean Devlin and Mark A. Altman and is an Electric Surge Network production.